think we took a little longer than what we thought to set up. I understand it is also raining and pouring in Gurgaon. Longer than what we thought to set up. Oops. I understand it is also. I think they're doing a live streaming on the YouTube, so it is repeating. So आप वहाँ से नहीं कर सकते. Please stop that live streaming. So I think we'll go live in a couple of minutes. Before that, some housekeeping rules so that we are pretty much aligned on it. So we have a camera. As we all can see, this is a camera. And we know this is a camera. So, so I'm drawing attention of everyone here. So what we are going to have is we are going to basically try to speak in the camera as much as possible. While of course we'll have an interaction here, and this gentleman will try to see how much he and how well he can capture as much he can zoom and capture some of us. Because people who are going to watch online, they'll be able to better connect. Otherwise, they will see a bunch of people sitting there. So instead of that, they would like to hear some specific perspective from the leaders sitting on the table. We'll keep our phones on silent. Live. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rakesh Sinha. I am the co-founder for Shared Services Forum, and very privileged and honest to have such a wonderful panel sitting next to me on the left and right hand side. Shared Services Forum, as you all know, it started way back in 2011 out of sheer passion to bring the global business services leaders in global space, India space, working across the functions, across the domains to share their learnings, share their stories of failures so that people can learn from each other, and so on and so forth. Shared Services Forum has very clear three focus, and many of you would be aware of it, starting with knowledge dissemination through events, through papers, through research, and so on and so forth. Second, bringing out something new in terms of some frameworks which could be applied, taken back by the organizations, learn from it, deploy it, and experience it, and further enhance it. Last but not least, also encourage the organizations as well as leaders through excellence awards and recognition. So we have a separate focus and an eminent jury panel which looks at excellence awards and recognition for both leaders and the companies. Today, what we are trying to do, and maybe another 75 minutes is what we'll keep. We'll try to wrap up around 8:25 India time. The objective is to deliberate something which we all have been grappling with in our own organization, in our own leadership capacity. Some would have achieved quite a lot in terms of the journey. Some of you would have seen that journey over the years, how it has shaped, how the disruption has happened, how organizations have evolved and achieved. Some of you would be in the mid stages of the journey and would be trying to deploy it. Some of you would have deployed it, but now new avatars or new role is trying to again run once again with the new challenges and the context and so on and so forth. In that parlance, we'll have divergent views, and we are very happy to have a different views. You may have people having a views by saying, okay, A is only right, and somebody is saying B is only right. We are very happy to have a divergent views, and we are happy to have people expressing their thought process in that context. So as we start, we have a small video for all the people who have joined physically as well as online. All the leaders who are joining virtually through the mediums like Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn event, warmly welcoming you for this Shared Services Forum Leadership Roundtable interaction. People who are going to join later in terms of watching a recording, you will have a great time listening to some of the perspectives here. We are going to share a small film or small video of the journey of Shared Services Forum over the last 10 years, and then we'll jump into what we call the agenda of the day, starting with a keynote address from Ravi Ramakrishnan. Ravi has joined specifically for this from US during his vacation, and very early morning for him. So as we finish that video, we'll move to the Ravi's quick address, and then we'll jump into the interaction on the topic what we have on our hand. So guys, can we have a video, please? I think very nostalgic for us. It's been a great journey of last 10 years. I think the next year we'll have a video for 11th year as well, and some of these roundtable will feature in the part of that film too. We had a very successful 11th conclave in Hyderabad this year, earlier this year in May. I think few of you were part of it, and I think it was very well received by the industry and well supported by the industry too. With this, I take a privilege and I feel really humbled and honored to have leaders sitting here with me. I warmly welcome each one of you. Very good evening. It's a difficult stuff, let me tell you honestly. I'm anxious. Why? I have people with diverse experience, right? And typically 350 years of experience in this room, right? And think about it, people with different industry background, 350 years of experience. Should I be anxious? Should I be nervous? Or should I be happy that I have to do a very little job? Everybody will take care of it. Excited. Okay, right. So which means that absolutely, I'm very thrilled and excited, and I think I'll have a great time for the next 60, 70 minutes because hearing some great perspectives from you all. Two quick points. First, I think all the speakers' profiles are available in a small booklet with the roundtable leaders sitting here in person with me on the left and right. So there's a small book which has the all the leaders' profile. So instead of reading it out, if you want to flick through, you can just check who all is sitting across the table. People who have joined online, this is being circulated to you. It is available on the website of Shared Services Forum, and it is also being pushed into the Zoom chat right now so that you can quickly flick through and see the profiles of the leaders sitting in this roundtable interaction. With this, without wasting any further time, I'll request the founder of Shared Services Forum and a known name from this industry, as we call the doyen of a business services industry, Mr. Ravi S. Ramakrishnan, to do a keynote. Ravi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rakesh. I'm audible there?
Ravi, we can hear you well.
Very good. So first of all, I think very good evening to each one of you there as leaders who have come and joined the roundtable. I can recognize each and every one of you, and I think it's a privilege for Shared Services Forum and for all of us to be part of this roundtable. I'm just sharing my thoughts. I think media is also able to connect me from US into India today evening. And I'm keen that this interaction with all of you becomes a valuable one as we compile and publish the focus on sustaining and nurturing value-driven organization. I'm just sharing some of my perspectives as I have gone through over the last 40 years of experience. You know, all of us have heard about learning organizations, which Peter Senge talked about. Then there is boundaryless organizations. And I think there is an important focus today which is required, which is what we have focused on this theme, which is value-driven organization. And I think there are many contexts to it. I'm sure each one of you have your thoughts to share. I just want to make sure there are three small perspectives to this. One is, of course, values-driven organization. I think that's important from any organization has to be driven by the core values. And I think it's something which is non-negotiable, it's essential, and I think I don't need to talk about it. That's one context, and that is obviously not the uh, theme today, although it's grounded in everything which we do, what we do, how we do. That's values-driven organization. The second one is shareholder value-driven organization, which I think is a context which all of us understand from different perspectives. That's something which is coming from outside in for people to look at how the organization is, how do we really look at the organization from a shareholder perspective, and also the kind of market environment perspective. Today, our focus is really what we have focused on is the value-driven organization. And value can be in different dimensions. It could be financial, it could be brand oriented, it could be governance oriented. Corporate has tremendous impact, and also really making sure different. So there are multiple dimensions. I'm sure you will deliberate this more and more. From my perspective, I would say that it's something which I see there are two big parts of an organization, and that's why we are focused this on the organization from as I see it, core functions, and then there are support functions. Core functions have multiple areas: production, sales, marketing. For organizations which are like pharma and chemicals and so on, it's product development, research and development, and so on and so forth. There are multiple core areas which are there for all organizations. There are support functions, and support functions over a period of time, I think a lot of people have started looking at roles, how roles change from a support role to a business role and so on and so forth. How even many of the deliberations have become how the chief financial officer becomes the chief focus officer. How does he become the co-pilot to the business CEO and so on and so forth. So support functions have multiple dimensions again, which is how do they become actually strategic functions? They don't just remain support. How do they actually encompass the entire enterprise? So I really see that support functions encompass the enterprise. So moving beyond support functions to looking at the strategic role, the enterprise role, and so on and so forth is possibly important. Quite often we believe core functions drive the value of an organization. And I think it's true. There's no taking away from it. But I think it's equally important for us to deliberate how the other part of the organization, whether it is finance and accounting, HR, IT, legal, secretarial, administration, you name it, all of them have, I think, I actually believe in my mind, value has, again, different dimensions. One is value creation, value protection, value enhancement, value erosion. There are multiple dimensions. There are many other dimensions of value which you may like to deliberate. But the point I'm saying is quite often we find that the so-called support functions are not seen driving value of an organization. Or put it differently, how can support functions drive value in an organization? And that's one of the primary areas of focus today as I see it. Because, and of course, they are afraid of how do the core functions and support functions work together. I think I have seen in several situations in many years of experience, not just value protection, but a lot of value erosions happening because that organization, some of the support organizations perform their roles in a silo. So one of the thoughts I wanted to make sure is that there is a necessity that we deliberate very actively and proactively on the role of support or strategic functions or the enterprise functions and how do they drive value. That's one of my thoughts, and I think this is something which we have spent a lot of time in the last 20, 25 years discovering from American Express, and what more can be done. And some of the Indian organizations, in terms of whether you look at companies which are, SRF or Sun Pharma or Dr. Reddy's, and so on and so forth. If you talk of how the global organizations have leveraged, whether it's talking of Nokia or, any other organization as you see it. So that's one important perspective I wanted to share, that it's important that both core functions and support functions should drive value. They should not take away value. Of course, one has to protect value, but much beyond that is creating and enhancing and driving value. The second important perspective which I wanted to share is the prefix to this, or the actionable verb as we call it, sustaining and nurturing a value-driven organization. I think it's very, very important. And the reason why I'm talking about as a second point of view is, quite often I can share with you from my experience, and I'm sure each one of you will be able to acknowledge, sustaining and nurturing value is actually happening by the so-called support functions and enterprise functions. I think if you have to protect, if you have to sustain, if you have to nurture, all this, when you talk of the areas of taking care of brand, governance, cyber security, innovations, people, not, people is the best asset one can think of. And, interestingly, people actually become a HR part of the organization. How do you really, integrate people into the organization in the way we are really looking at it? So second point of view for me is sustaining and nurturing, in fact, happens more in the support organizations, because the core of functions are given very clearly to do that. Yeah, there are areas where there are challenges in terms of, where your production is not happening properly or marketing is not happening properly, etc. But I would say that it's important that the need for focus is very clear. How do you really make this happen? And the last but not the least, I would really like to share that about people. I think this is something which I passionately believe. Whenever we talk about organization, to me, it's about people. And to me, it includes every person involved in the organization, frontline, the top management. Actually, in a typical way, we tend to look at the certain levels and above as overheads of the organization, unfortunately, in the financial term, if I can say it. And I think that's the way the accounting works. But I think from a business context, I think it's important that the senior leadership provides a direction. Actually, I used to call it a sustaining part of this is also done by the leadership, which is very, very important. Sustaining and growing, is important from the leadership perspective. And the leaders have to make sure that the people are totally nurtured. How do we create innovative practices to drive value? In today's context, there are several examples of many kinds. Actually, as I was walking into the US visit this time, I was spending more time to understand some of the large organizations. And one of the, perspectives I was interested to know is about the day one mentality of the Amazon, how they make people focus on the customer experience. Actually, it becomes customer obsession today, not just customer experience. So in my mind, people focus on customer experience, and I wanted to make sure that experience is very, very integral part of whatever we do. I think we provide a service or a product offering, but I think it's important for us to make sure that the experience is what remains at the end of the day. So I would say that in summary, I would focus on how do we really drive value through the support or strategic functions or enterprise functions of the organization. I think that's something which is critical today in the current context. with technology actually taking a leadership as a business role, no longer technology as a support mode. Even I would say finance, even there are many organizations where HR is taking a leadership on strategic planning for the future. So there are many, many areas one would talk about how that is happening. Second one is how do we make sure we sustain and nurture the value and not erode value? I think that's very critical. And how do we therefore become business and people focused in everything which we do as leadership while creating a value driven organization? So I think I would say this is the important theme for us. And I'm really delighted that this august audience is there congregated to deliberate on this. I really wish you all the best, and I'm going to be a keen listener to the entire conversation, although I'll switch off my video so that the bandwidth is not taken away. But it's a privilege once again and a warm welcome once again to each one of you, and have an excellent deliberation and look forward to insightful thoughts and thoughts which can communicate the power of this wonderful team of 400 plus years. Over to you, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Ravi. I think hearing the pointers in terms of like day one mentality at Amazon, talking about customer obsession beyond experience, and some of these value protection and value vision, I think was very powerful points Ravi was talking about. I think, and we'll have a direction set pretty much in terms of how to build our dialogue. A couple of points, I think, feel free whenever you have a point to add. So we're not going to do a typical round robs here. So please come in if you have a point to add on any question. But I will throw balls, if I have to say, with some of you and just say, okay, this is a question for you. And if you want to add something there, please feel free to come in and talk. The only request I'll have is to make it meaningful, because what we want to do after today's session over the next few days, we'll compile all this as a key takeaways and become a document or an article or a report which will be circulated as a key takeaways to the industry across. So if you can cite some examples and bring out some of those specifics, even if it is about you tried something and has not worked. As I said, the failures are the best way to learn from each other. So don't hesitate to share anything in terms of the learning. So specifics and examples will be very, very helpful. Just opening it now as we're talking about this whole sustaining and nurturing and this term value driven, and Ravi also gave a twist to it by saying usually, and this is something just to give you a sense, when we were starting this whole topic of value driven, few people called me to check, is it a value based organization, values, how are looking at in terms of shareholder values, and so on and so forth. And we explain it is about more value driven organization, and how we look at value is a framework actually Shared Services Forum created about 4 or 5 years back, where we defined what we mean by value. In that context, we will like to have this conversation. Of course, you can add your perspective. We say values in 3 buckets, if I have to say. The first bucket is what we call as financial, or connecting with typically the business growth or financials in one bucket. The second bucket we talk about is governance, in terms of how you strengthen, build your governance in terms of your organization. That's a number 2 component of the value we say. The third component we say is experience. And today it's about experience as a service, and experience not only about customer, but employee, distribution partner, supply chain, and so on and so forth, connecting multiple dimensions of it. So experience as a service. So financial, governance, and experience put together is what we at an SSF defined the value. Now, taking it further ahead, I think we talked about this reimagining the support function. I think this reimagining, redefining, rebooting, revitalizing is something which is up the sleeve or up the conversation for the last couple of years. But we really want to step back to reimagine, not the support functions, but connecting that support functions to the business growth. We are saying typically, and I'm happy to hear from you, and you can challenge it, please, this point, that typically support function, as even Ravi was saying, is seen still as a support function, right? There are people who are doing a lot of great stuff, a lot of good job, but they're still not the core to the business. They're not part of the business growth. It's still the metrics. Can we continue? Okay. Just check the online thing is on. Sorry, I think we had a bit of a power blip here. So you're back. We were talking about the whole the support function becoming, in a way, the cost metrics every time. Everybody talks about cost optimization, and starting point of cost optimization is support function. The metric given is typically in terms of you are the X percentage of the top line, and if you are an X percentage of top line, you are very good. No one talks about how much you have contributed to the top line, right? So that somewhere, that's a perception or the impression about the support function, and that is where we wanted to hear from you. We're saying, how should we reimagine the support function to really become a strategic function? And that's maybe a starting point of conversation. Maybe request Anup, you want to take a lead to share some thoughts, and maybe we'll go others to contribute to it.
So first of all, I dislike the word support. I don't think they are support functions. Some people even say it could be enablement functions. But I think all these functions continue to be business functions. If you generally look at a car, most people will feel that if the cabin is good, if the dashboard looks good, steering is good, that is a driving experience. But no one thinks of the tires, the suspension, the engines, the non-visible parts. So in a way, support functions are the non-visible parts to an external organization, but critical for the running of the vehicle and for the experience that one gets while driving. So I think first of all, that this whole nomenclature of support should go away. And secondly, when I looked at support functions, I always tried to link their metrics to the organization's metrics. I don't think the two are very different. So if you want to grow by X number of people, which is the engine which has to feed those X number of people, and until they know what you want to do, what you want to achieve, they will not be able to fulfill that. So I think it's possible to link each and every enablement function to business metrics. And if we can achieve that, that also gives a purpose to the support functions or enablement functions. And I think they can understand and contribute much better to the organization.
Thanks for that perspective, Anup. Anybody here would like to add further to it? Maybe Rajneesh, you want to go with a thought here?
So absolutely, I concur with Anup. Support functions shouldn't really be called support functions. I also dislike the term support. In fact, I come from the world of technologies myself, having grown up in the world of technologies. Once upon a time, 15 years, 20 years ago, maybe the CIO was a support to the CEO. Today, there are technology companies which are coming up. In fact, unicorns who've started up in the garage and today are $1 billion plus valuation. And these are all run on technologies. In fact, if anything, the CIO is probably the most core entity within the boardroom. Likewise, I've also been lucky in my lifetime. I've led very large teams, over 10,000 people. HR cannot be a support function. If you're running an organization with 10,000 people and more, and in fact, Ravi pointed that out as well, that any such organization, HR is a core function. Innovation is a core function. Quality control, core function. MIS, once upon a time, MIS and reporting was a support function. That's not the case today. Today, there are organizations that are running on the analytics and AI-based analytics, which reports are being produced and being acted on. And you hear of marketing campaigns which are run entirely on these analytics which are shared. So these are not support functions. So personally, I think the distinction in itself of core function and support function is gone. And all these are core in one way or the other.
No, I think it's an interesting perspective. We are hearing that support function should not be even called a support function. I can see Sunil wants to go next. Sunil, you want to share? And I have a couple of CFOs here, I know, and I want to challenge them more because they are typically seen either the custodian of this entire support function. They have a pressure of cost optimization, starting with their own function first. So Sunil, you being a CFO yourself, so go ahead.
So thanks, Rakesh. I mean, this room at least appears to me, maybe I'm wrong, full of people who are basically in the so-called support function. And we obviously don't like the nomenclature support. But irrespective of the nomenclature which you use, and I'm sorry, I can't face the camera and you at the same time. So that's a bit of a, issue because I'm looking at you and thinking at the back becomes a bit difficult. But what I'm trying to basically say, Rakesh, is that, I mean, whatever you might call, whether you call ourselves as support or enabler or whatever, the fact of the matter is that we will continue to remain a support function unless until we are able to demonstrate value. And this is coming back to what Ravi said, and I was not privy to what he was about to say. But at the end of the day, can we create value somehow or the other? Because I get this question time and again, and I'm talking from real life issues, that what value are you creating? I mean, doing accounting and doing compliance, etc., is not creating value, right? So I get this question n number of times from people in the business. Can you demonstrate somehow that you can create value? And how can we do that? Just to give one practical example, maybe is that we set up a small team which is called TAS, and we sell that the services of that team, and TAS stands for Transformation as a Service. So any function in the business wanting to transform itself or its processes can come to us, and we will transform it for you. Obviously, it will mean that you will have to be at that particular cost, but that is the service which we are willing to provide to you. That is the value add which we are trying to give to the business. One small example. I leave it.
I think it's interesting perspective. So we are hearing a perspective. I just want to take a quick view here, and then I'll go there. I think I have maybe triggered an interesting deliberation. Maybe I could have kept this topic for the later, but great. So maybe Sanjay and then Hemant.
Yeah, what I agree with what Anup said. Yes, Sunil also. And I think so. There was a saying earlier in one of the organizations which I have worked that gardens can't be important than Taj Mahal. So that's but I don't agree to that. So the gardens itself, because that's the entry point to the Taj Mahal, and the first impression you get from the gardens is what would be the inside there. So what you adding value, I think so. What we are saying, we in our organization have made a team of both core and support functions, which we call as a cross-functional team. So where everything is discussed and people understand the value of each of the functions. That's the way we understand each other, and so we understand the business main points, and then we also keep our points. That it's not that if you're going on the something new, you'll not be able to add value unless you're making all the compliances, everything or done. Yeah, that's the way we do.
So it is, I mean, sorry, Rakesh, it is not about support functions versus the mainstream function. I think it is about us being able to demonstrate that if you kind of carry with us, then you benefit. Yeah. And we are not a appendix to the whole business system.
No, I think while I hear both the sides of the view by saying, we should not even call it a support function. We are doing a lot of core stuff, etc., which is also reality. And I think Rajneesh very rightly talked about IT as a business. In fact, IT has first been as a support function, which has come out of being a support function to really run like a business. But we are still to see many other support functions similarly, while they are very close, they are connected, but are they able to create those metrics which connects back to the value? That's a question. Hemant, you want to take a quick perspective? Maybe you want to take that cap.
Yeah. Thanks, Rakesh. I am a bit of a rebel. So even in Gita, Bhagavan said that the 4 ones is something which he has created. And the ones, unfortunately, how we understand is कि जन्म अगर ब्राह्मण हुआ है तो हम ब्राह्मण ही बनेंगे. That was not how it was created. It was created basis what you would do during your lifetime, and we have kind of created it for our own selfish needs. So how does it matter what it is called? As long as that guy is doing his function for which he has been hired, and as I said, I'm a bit of a rebel. I'm saying every guy who's hired and has a job is adding value. The fact that we are saying that A person is not adding value and B person is possibly adding value, whichever function it is a bit of a misnomer, because every guy who's adding value is there, and that's why he's got that job. However, what happens is when everyone comes together, irrespective of the ones and the functions, one I'm using as a function here, comes together for that one vision or that one mission, and where that KPIs of that organization, the strategic 4, 5, 6 KPIs, that gets percolated down to everyone, and they all work towards that. And sometimes, so a procurement function, for example, will always create a value which will be disproportionately higher than possibly someone else can. I'm not here taking names of functions, because their available spend is so much, whereas, and they can demonstrate. Now, the fact is that it's a typical thing where, if you're putting something new, especially in IT, let's say, because he spoke of IT, can you always put on paper what value you have delivered? It's very difficult. It's more the gut. And so consequently, I would rest my case saying that, guys, if we have to deliver value, all the functions need to work towards the greater good, and the value itself will come through two. A, people wanting to work for the company. Do they see it as a brand which is good or working worth its weight working for? And B, the financials.
Okay, it's an interesting perspective. I'll go to Sanjay and then Samir, please. Sanjay, you want to talk about? I'll just come back to you. Sorry, Sanjay. Yes, Sanjay. Quickly, a comment in terms of this whole support to strategic function, right? So, if you can just give a quick perspective, and then I'll Samir, and then I'll come to Rakhi here. I have to go to Deepika as well.
Yeah. Several thoughts going through the mind, but I do want to make one point. I think we are in this room overwhelmingly financially biased or biased towards financial metrics, because I see, are being swayed by the definition of value being restricted to numbers that can be measured. So long as we are talking about creating value, which can be felt and measured and recorded and demonstrated, we believe its value. And those elements that can not either be fully numbered or not even be assessed somehow become lower in reference to be established as value. So, so long as functions which contribute to the top line, bottom line, shareholder value, whatever numbers, EPS, they seem to have taken precedence about whether we are or not creating value. Rakesh mentioned, like experience, for instance. Now, if I am able to carry out a business or a function which is improving employee experience, or even experience of the people who are dealing with us in the supply chain organization, or even customers. I was giving this one example, very simple, that if you go out there buying an iPhone, however the payment mechanism fails miserably, it's not the iPhone's fault, but you still come away with a horrible taste in your mouth, saying everything was fine, but you know what? While I was trying to make the payment, it took an hour. The buying of it didn't take more than 20 minutes, but the payment process took an hour, and it was like quite painful. Now, the salesman over there has got very little influence about how the gateway worked and all of that stuff, but nevertheless, the customer takes a composite experience. Same is the case with things like control. We talk about governance and control, and we believe that those elements just cannot be measured. You cannot ever say that governance is so much better here, and therefore it's 50% better than where it isn't as good. So, while I agree that yes, every role creates value, but I think it has to be seen in the context of these three. See, otherwise what happens is that you sort of begin to lose if you are required to create value, I'm sorry, I'm going on a little longer, but if you're required to create value, I would suggest that everything can be termed as value, but we must focus and say for this purpose and very, very defined purpose alone, value for us means only these three things. Measurable, top line, rupees, dollars, whatever you want to say. Second, control, governance. And third, experience employees, experience customers, experience blah, whatever. Human experience, you may call it. There can be other 4 or 5 or 6 things which can also be roped in to be called value. But you have to put a doorway somewhere and say, ki, so long as you are touching these three, you're creating value. Anything else is actually eroding value or at least not contributing.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, Sanjay. I think we were also talking about, it's just not about value creation because everybody believes that they're trying to contribute to the value. The problem is, are you taking away the value erosion sometimes just by being there where you are versus even being shouldering and working together with the core team or the core organization somewhere, and it is still perceived as whatever I think we are saying. I think based on our own survey with a lot of organizations globally in India, still it is called, while we have given fancy names, enterprise processes, enterprise functions, etc., they're still called support functions, right? And sometimes they're still seen as a back office of the organization, whatever you call it. There are some companies, could be exceptions, but still on a generic basis, they're still called to be like that. So the question still remains where, how can you really make it a strategic function? As Rajneesh was saying, can you pivot, invert the pyramid and say, it is a running like a business. So similarly, what makes this a strategic function? Some examples will be helpful. Samir, I'm sure you'll have some pointers to share. I'll come back. So Samir, go ahead.
Okay, so I personally feel that the watertight compartment for any department is over. Whether it's finance, whether it's HR, whether it's IT, or it's sales, or it's manufacturing, those days where you only are, let's say, an expert only in your area are gone. In fact, IT is the other side of the same coin for every function. Every function is IT function. I used to head finance long time back, but I was also a HR guy. I was also a production guy. As long as we are able to decipher data into a story and get that data to the sales guy, for example, in Agilent, I download the customs from the customs website, how many of our competitors imported what, to give them a heads up as to where they are going to sell. I'm able to tell them how the competition is doing in which particular segment, in which particular geography. So the ability for you to understand their process upstream and downstream, make sure that you are actually watching the competition's financials very well and being able to decipher that into some actionable insight. I think when I used to head finance, I was able to give them real-time on-demand reporting, telling them that this product line, according to me, is coming up for end of life because customers are not ordering or they're asking extra discounts. I have engineering, so I head now the entire India, what should I call it, capability center, which includes not just so-called support functions, but also engineering services, also R&D, also product design. So the crash testing is done in India. Most of, I don't know how many of you are aware, but the crash testing of cars is mostly done by simulation. No better place than India to be able to do it. So your ability to appreciate the interlinkages, be seen more at the water cooler or the coffee conversations with folks outside of your immediate domain. So it's up to us to break those shackles, get away from those watertight compartments, and it's so much interlinked. Add value to the other guy. From a finance perspective, since we have a bird's eye view, I think we're naturally at an advantage. Help them. Everything is now pay for use. Those days of capex are gone. How do I help the sales guy? How do I help the production guy? How do I help my marketing guy? How do I help my communication guy? So help each other. As some of the other panelists also said, it's all about synergy. Get away from this mindset. Forget about support. Everything is owned by everybody. So that's my take.
Right, thanks, Samir. I think maybe Rakhi, just a quick point from you to understand, how do you see this whole synergy with the core function really happening? I think, and breaking those watertight departments to really making it like a run together as an organization, shouldering it together and trying to create those capabilities. Any thoughts from you?
Yeah, sure. So I think I could so much relate to what you said just now, the interlinkages, especially in today's times. You know, when I started maybe about 15 years back, things were very different. Finance department was, you know, somewhere in the corner of the building, but things are very different now. I'm from finance department, but then, you know, I can talk about the same thing when it comes to HR department or maybe technology. We are working so closely with all the different departments, which you call business or delivery guys or whatever you call them, right? They cannot start their day without looking at some of the dashboards which are provided by these so-called support functions. They're not able to. So we have this concept of business partnering now in finance, in HR. There are technology departments which are in our company, in our organization. I can say that we have technology departments cutting across all the functions. So we have a dedicated finance technology, we have a dedicated post-trade technology, and similar, you know, so HR technology. So we are all working so much together now. The interlinkages, this is something which we have seen, you know, probably in last few years quite a lot. It's very different from what it used to be few years back.
Sure. So I think
and there was one more point which I wanted to add about customer and client centricity that we were talking about, and this is one example from our organization. We have this employee engagement survey which is done every year, and there's one question on you know, your interaction with clients or something of that sort. And there used to be always this question from people who join in finance or HR department saying that we never interact with clients, you know, talking about this support function versus the business function. And there, a lot of times support functions think that our clients are the internal clients. But in our organization, we are very clear that client here means external client. And what we have to really think here, it's really about the mindset, that how finally every function in the company, how they are actually supporting the external clients. So it's not just restricted for support functions or enabler functions, just the internal clients, but to look at how it gets linked to the external clients and think about that.
Yeah. I think some of the summary takeaways, if I can see it's coming out, is there used to be something called support functions. And I think a good point even Hemant brought up, while he had a very different views, we're saying, you know, it's all the definition we create, right? So it's a definition, it's a mindset. And if you think that you want to, and as Samir was saying, that if you come out of that department mindset and say, okay, I'm pretty much horizontal and I'm pretty much part of the same business, and I have to look at the core area of the organization, whatever the offering is, and how can I relate my offering to that core area. And as Sanjay and even Sunil talked about, those values specifically in terms of the either financials or governance or the experience, I think he was talking about. I think that makes a difference if you really want to move from a typical support function mindset towards becoming a strategic function. So the learning for some of the organizations who are in that journey, if I have to say, is really change your mindset, you know, break those barriers, be the organization yourself, redefine yourself in terms of by how can you be strategic function by thinking on some of those values, like even talking about a client and so forth. I know, yeah, Raghu, please.
One small point.
Yeah, I mean, I know you can sue, so I have no choice to give you the.
I only fight cases when I'm paid. Having said that, I think I'm generally getting a sense that it's a bad thing to be called as a support function. You know, there's nothing wrong.
People are emotional. People are emotional about saying
about it. And I go Anup's example, he was talking about a car. How often would you buy a car whose brakes are not working and whose accelerator is not working and whose, you know, the question is that you buy an expensive car only when the brakes are good. And that's why the car is expensive. Please understand, the spine is the support of your body. If the spine is not there, you're not there. The question is that why are we feeling so apologetic in this forum? Because we have a support function. And trust you me, I run a legal department which is perhaps much smaller even than the finance department. But you got to have that pride that you contribute to the organization. And that's how the organization will look at you with respect, and you have to bring value. You can't just go on telling the organization, you can do this, you can't do this. At the end of the day, if you bring value to the table, the organization will listen to you. And that's when they will value. Value is not a metric. If value was the only metric, Satyam wouldn't have failed. Satyam did not have a good support system. That's why Satyam failed. And all the way, Enron didn't have that. Multinational. The question is that please value what you contribute to the organization. Doesn't matter. And how did support system started? It started, if you go back into history, when a guy was doing business, did not know how to keep the accounts, he got a finance guy.
Right.
Support functions have always historically have been added to reduce cost, not because the value that they add, but now the roles have changed substantially.
And that's where, just to clarify, I think the value definition which you're talking about here is the 3 buckets. So governance itself is a value. It is not that you're enhancing governance. Your value does not mean only financial value. Just to clarify, when we're using even a value-driven organization, even from our point of view, we are very clearly saying you have to focus on 3 areas. You have to think of going beyond doing your just job. It's just not about saying I'm taking care of my accounting and a compliance and so on and so forth. But can I do something which is further in bring value? It could be in terms of strengthening governance and control, which is of a different nature, or bringing something in terms of the cost optimization to the top line growth, or it could be in terms of experience management of the organization, right? I'll just hold you guys. I know you guys wanted to contribute on this. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the only aspect, Raghu, I want to add is everything agreed. I think communication plays a very big role in this. If we are not able to communicate the value which we bring on the table, then everything goes for a toss. It's very proud to be a support function everywhere. But if you're not able to tell that the brakes are expensive because of this, or the car is because of this expense, and you can't tell that story, it's gone. And that's where the value goes away. So I think communication as a foundation plays a very big role. If you can tell and go back, say, I'm going to tell you that these are the write-offs which are happening for you because I'm an accountant, and this helps your panel to improve. And if you're able to tell your story and tell them how the company, benefits, I think they'll not live without you.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to absolutely. So you're absolutely right. I think you have to communicate the value which is important. Otherwise, you become a cost center. I'll ask a question and maybe you can add both together, Joydeep. So I'll take a next one with you. I think a lot of this is also about, when you're talking about value, it also calls for proactively thinking something. Today, what has happened is everything. I can give you example, and I have been part of some of the evaluations and audits, and I really realize people saying, "Oh, I have delivered so much of the value." What happens? They were looking at the end of the year and they said, okay, whatever was not qualified under, whatever they could say, it's my service levels. And they were saying, okay, it is value, versus saying this much of value potential is possible in the beginning of the year. And that's where we have created a framework called value potential to value delivery. And then you capture the value and then create the story. Rather, everything is retro. So I want to understand proactively, how can you do that? And that is where the next topic comes in the mind, by saying disruption as usual. We are saying, when we were pushed into a corner for anything in terms of any, challenges like even the pandemic, and too much has talked about the pandemic, so I don't want to even get near that, right? But even anything, it's everything, somehow it is like disruption is seen as change, and we are reacting to that disruption, versus we are talking about how can you be a disruption as usual, where you proactively drive those, or engineer those disruptions, work on those, and finally ultimately create that value, or the value driven organization. So any thoughts in terms of proactive disruptions and proactive disruption as usual, Joydeep, and you can take it from there, and maybe I'll come to you. So I don't know, Joydeep, and then Sanjay, and then Sanjeev.
Okay, so I was trying to speak for quite some time on the first topic itself. When people are talking about value. Sorry, I hope I learned. So I represent organization SRF. So I can give you live examples. I do not exactly agree that the function I'm the head of finance, and I agree finance doesn't add value. It does. So point is that as the head of function, I have to make people think differently. So how we have been able to add value, because the organization also believes that you can't be doing what you call a bin counter's job all the way. So you tell me how you add value. There are a couple of things. One function in finance has some also called core function and other finance also, core finance and other finance. There's also definition there as well. So the core finance here is treasury, one function which continuously adds value. You can measure. What you call core function is something which adds to either the top line or the bottom line. So we others keep on pushing them to add towards that. So treasury is function which adds straight away to the bottom line. Even if you manage your ECF, your interest and loans and etc., how you manage your funds is one area. Investment money, they add value. So one cannot say that finance doesn't add value. Treasury is one function. Two is there's a set of some other functions who basically, AP, AR, whatever you said. So what we have done, actually, I belong to an organization which has locations across the globe, a business across the globe. So when Rakesh had launched the shared services, we had only India per se, and where the AP was automated. Subsequently, now we have automated AP, AR, payroll, and now we are trying to get the global functions in shared services. Now there is a challenge because that's how you add value. He's saying that, okay, these are support functions. There's the economies of scale, bring it under the one umbrella. So globally also there is APAR, but the problem is there's compliance and understanding the law, which is currently possible sitting in India. That's one challenge we are facing. So we have addressed that also. So that's another strategy. We don't want to go into that at this point in time. The third thing is analytics. Business analytics, Power BI, all those ClickSense and which helps to analyze what sir has just mentioned, try to be support to everybody else. So analyze the information and present it such a way that people believe that, yeah, you're adding value. What I could not think, you're provoking me to think. So finance function is actually doing that. And I actually, after doing all these couple of things, people have actually recognized you're a force to reckon with. So I cannot always tell you that.
No, I think good point. So I think just want to build further. Maybe Sanjeev, you want to take it further in terms of this whole disruption as usual, and how you see that it can be a proactive BAU.
Yeah, Rakesh, I think disruption is happening around us, and it's led by technology, which is changing every day. And the organizations are trying to be digital now, right? And that's the way to go because solutions are different for different organizations. So what the organizations are doing is building their internal capabilities to understand. So being closer to the business and being closer to the customer is important. And I think what was happening was earlier, we were having our own product and service and we were offering clients, and which was a fallacy because that has changed now. And I work for a professional services firm, so I know the way we have grown. So you being closer to the customer, understand their problems and be part of the solutions, whether it is technology, whether it is human resource, whether it is analytics and cognitive, because the demands of each customer is different. And what customers are looking at, are you able to bring a customized solution to them which suits their business needs? And it's not one product which fits in all. Even if you look at SAP for HANA, there are different versions being implemented. If you look at AI cognitive, that's different. Cloud means different technology, drone means different. So technology is a solution, but it's not a full solution for everything. You need to be closer to the customer, understand, work with them, bring solutions on the table, because everything has a price point as well, because the organizations are looking at what price point I want to invest in these technology solutions. So solutions are available, so need to be, and this is accepted now. This is an accepted norm. And what we have seen, what has worked and what is going to work in the future is customized solutions, bring new technology into picture. And the biggest thing which we have seen, even you bring technology, is the magnet of change and culture in the organization. Because you don't have people who are skilled enough to adopt this and make this change. And a lot of things, and I'll give an example. If
so on the
CFO,
culture, I'll come back to you.
Is a CFO responsible for RPA, then it is wrong because the whole organization is responsible for implementing RPA. And if I'm going to track this, the number of RPAs I've implemented, you're going to fail.
Yep.
You need to look at what it brings, the number, and what it makes sense for the business to implement, right? It's just not chasing a wild dream that everybody is doing RPA. Does it make sense to do RPA as it? So I think you need to look
with the
at
herd
solutions.
mentality.
Yeah.
Absolutely, very right. Anand, I have a quick point for you. I mean, if you can add that quickly, and then I'll come to Sanjay here. In terms of, and I want to things to move. I think we've talked a lot about support functions. I want to talk something more on that, right? So it's in terms of these, as we say, if you change after disruption, you can survive. If you change with the disruption, you can succeed. And if you can be the change leader, you can really be the lead in terms of driving that. And that's the whole point of disruption as usual. So it's not that, yeah, if you can cause disruption, if you can't cause disruption. So it is not about just being at the fag end of receiving that disruption and being part of the change. So Anand, any thoughts from you? And I think if you can connect also in terms of the difference between an operational organization to a progressive organization, connecting that point.
So very clearly, the question is specifically about induced proactive disruption. And this need not come only from the technology at all, only from envisaging what upcoming technology or other changes around us are likely to bring to the business world. As leaders, we need to see disruption induction as our catalytic role to cause a disruption, positive disruption, and that is, there are ways and means of ensuring that it is not just disruption for the sake of breaking something, but basically in the context that we are talking, this is the best way to unlock a value. Because a lot of value might have been captured statically in various parts of your business just by making sure that a change that you are bringing about through the disruption as usual or whatever is actually enabling that value to come to the front and being able to then add to it. And then, as you had rightly put it, Rakesh, capture, create a story around it. As Deepika was saying about that, unless you communicate, the value will have little meaning. And then the delivery cycle of the value is completed. So that is how I feel about it. And there are various ways in which, as so-called business leaders or functional leaders, in fact, I will not even go into support and all that. We, in this forum at least, we have brought that so-called those functions into our business as usual. Our core business is that. So for us, that is the core business. And we have the best, or I would say one potentially the best position to cause those disruptions. They will not be caused by the so-called line functions.
I think I just want to make a statement, and maybe I'll request all of you to say if you have real examples to cite, right? So instead of, so I think it's very clear. So the statement here is, what was the last thing where you were really in a discomfort zone and now it has become a comfort zone for you and your organization? So you have made that typically what is called discomfort zone and moving into the comfort zone. So you are comfortable with the discomfort zone now. Any examples which you'd like to share specifically will be helpful. Yeah, okay. Rajneesh wants to go for it. I'll come from there.
So I'll give you not one, not two, but three very quick. So not take more than 2 or 3 minutes. Just so a minute each. So I'll take the example of Zoom. So today I'm a consultant and Zoom is a client of mine. And since you're using Zoom as an example as well, it's very pertinent. So on 3 counts, I'll give you examples. First from the employees, and actually all these 3 are listed in your creating value piece. So from an employee perspective, one, of course, the hybrid working culture and flexibility of operations, etc. Many things have been said about that, which today, the capability exists, and we are very comfortable. In fact, I know so many organizations where at one point in time, we used to be so worried, how am I going to measure the productivity of somebody who's working from home and so on and so forth. Today, all I'm worried about is not whether you're doing 8 hours a day, but are you producing the number of widgets I asked you to produce? That's it. That's all that matters. So productivity measures is all that matters. We made that transition so seamless, and today most of my clients today are feeling that actually my productivity has improved with people working from home and so on. So that's on the employee side. On the customer side, the experience is totally different. So, if I take insurance as an example, the person who's not even a customer, say a prospect, today, when he or she calls me up as an insurance company, he doesn't even need to come to my office. Sitting from his home, we're on a Zoom call, We record that call. There is a whiteboard which is, so if I'm the agent, I'm trying to explain to him as to, sir, how am I calculating your premium? I do all that calculation on a whiteboard, and that whiteboard is recorded along with the rest of the video conference for posterity. So God forbid, if 6 months later he raises a claim, he knows exactly as to what he can claim and what he can't claim. So that's on the customer side. Third is innovation. Visualize that we are, so, we are all used to, since we're shared services, back office folks, visualize a headphone, but with 2 cameras here as well. So I'm a doctor, I'm a specialist, I'm in the operating theater, I'm wearing that, it's a wearable device, but it is also connected to Zoom. And these are, by the way, these are not hypothetical examples or examples for the future. These are currently working in the pilot phases of hospitals, where the doctor who's on the operating table, actually doing his operation, and through those cameras, actually he is visible to a classroom in the same. So because typically most of these are educative hospitals, so there'll be a classroom of potential doctors or doctors who are interns who will be listening in over Zoom to this doctor who's conducting the operation live. Those are 3 very varied examples, and how one client of mine, I narrated the instances in terms of what is practical, what is disruption as usual. I love that phrase, by the way. I love that phrase, disruption.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah.
Just something to
Just a point. I think I would like Gaurav and Deepika, you to be thinking in terms of something on this whole point on this, because I think Rajneesh gave a cue in terms of this whole people and cultural shifts point of view, and I think driving this culture, because how to move from this whole strategies of people are still talking about work from home, right, as a point, and still they say they're still talking about anywhere operations. And I think Rajneesh gave a great example that how we have moved miles on it. What are some of these newfound strategies making that cultural shift? And you are creating something which again connects back to the experience. So think on that. By the time I have two gentlemen giving a quick comments, Joydeep and Hemant here on the previous point. And Sanjay, I also want you to come before you finish, and I know you have to leave. So Joydeep, you quick, and then Hemant.
We use Microsoft Teams, so Zooms are all the same. So it has actually been disruption per se. Initially, when there was a pandemic, we thought that we'll never be able to work out of home, but Microsoft Teams has made it possible. Now, another interesting, it may sound very, so what happens is when you are Microsoft Teams, you're at home. So you are on call, and people expect you to be as if you are in office. So generally, when we are at home, we take the privilege of, various other activities while we are at work. So after a couple of weeks, this is something which our good friends in HR has evolved. So what happens is they send an email. So, and they mention in the email that during this period, they have never said anything, just send the email. Analytics is one procedure. So during this period, you have spent so many hours on Teams, you have spent so many hours with this person, with that person, so much of conversation you have done. So actually you're trying to tell me that while you're working out of home, you have been at work for so many hours only. I leave it at that. No. They send collation to a boss. Nobody says anything. They just send the mail. Just to prick your conscience. My friend, you're working out of home, so you're supposed to work out of home, not take afternoon siestas.
This is an interesting one. Quite a lot. So we'll come to that, I think, on the people's side. Yeah. But a quick inputs from you, Sanjay, and maybe Hemant. Yeah.
One thing you should mention, disruption as usual and the proactive approach. I think so. Mother Dairy is one of the live example. In the last 47 years of our existence, I think so, our booths have never gone dry. So it means a lot of working, whether it was the 1984 riots or the Mandal Kamandal or the pandemic. Not even a single day. So it means so much proactive approach has gone into the planning, from the picking of the milk from the farmers to the bringing it to the plants to processes and bringing it to the booths. A few other disruption, I think so. One of the disruption during that we launched the turmeric or haldi milk, which is doing good for us. So disruption, so that is advantage which has gone to us. There was a lot of tampering used to happen in the oil. So Mother Dairy and the Dhara that time, which is our also brand. Dhara was the pioneer in starting the Tetra Pak in the oil. So those are the disruptions which were there. So nobody thought that nobody can tamper. So that the tamper-proof packings of the Dhara, almost about 30 years back, 89, 90s. So these are all disruptions which were happening, and we took advantage of that and became the leaders in that. Shuffle piece, the pioneers in the IQF technology, the three major brands, and the token milk, which everybody who is in Delhi, NCR will understand that shortage of milk towards 80s. And we were the pioneers in setting up almost about 900 booths across India, across Delhi, NCR. And we just put up a token and you get the milk without, which is environment friendly 30 years back. Thought of all those things, disruption which nobody thought that time. So all those things are the examples of disruptions which has helped our organization to be pioneer and leader in doing this, which people had not even thought about.
I think from that perspective, we all are being a consumer of Mother Dairy. We know how it is important. I think the maybe I have to just stretch that point to say, okay, that's a core business still trying to do that. What about the enabling function? I'm just still trying to keep that question in my mind. Having said that, I'm still on the disruption and something on the people side. If Hemant, you can make a quick point, I want to just go to this.
So, well, clearly, if you're not going to disrupt yourself, someone is going to disrupt you. Simple. And if you look at your history of organizations who have survived years and years, they have themselves disrupted themselves. Otherwise, they won't have survived. Because there's enough people who are trying to disrupt your business. And I'll give you an example. This is which I did myself. In the FMCG sector, there's this whole thing about capturing secondary sales. So usually people would go ahead and put a software on the distributor's desktop, get the distributor to kind of book his sales. And at the day end, they would, through some means, collect data and then try to analyze problems. The distributor's hard disk crashes. Now for 2 days, till it becomes the company's problem to send the engineer to get his thing working and again restore the backups. Now you effectively have lost 2 days of sales because he's not captured it for sure. So what I did is we said we'll go online. We will get him to put it on a server, pretty much like Gmail. It's there on the cloud. He will connect. He just needs a dumb terminal and he'll do it. People were scandalized. Will it work? And it came to a situation where I was told by my chairman, who obviously this was an American company, so he had no clue of what a distributor, the Indian way of FMCG. So he says, look, you either deliver this, I'm putting so many dollars, thousands of dollars on this. It's either your job or you deliver this. And I took up the challenge. And the fact is that it's working brilliantly, even I understand even today. And this was the first time this ERP company said that this is the first in India, at least if not in the world, where they have put this solution online for FMCG.
I think it's a very powerful example of some innovations and taking a proactive lead of driving that disruption. And I think when you say I have done it, which means, of course, an enabling function has really enabled the business and the business side of that disruption. I'll come to you, Sunil. Just a couple of points. I wanted Gaurav to come in. I think it's been a while. Gaurav, I want to hear from you more in terms of this whole this innovative people practices, culture shifts, etc., etc. The question is, how do you think organizations can cope up to create or nurture this value-driven organizations? What they need to do to create that or nurture or build that value-driven organization? We're talking about a lot of values, right? And not only in the core function, but even across the support functions or enabling functions. And Deepika, same questions back to you as well, but maybe Gaurav first.
Thanks, Rakesh. So I think you actually answered your own question. So, for the entire thing, it depends on the culture. You have to build that culture of innovation, the culture to fail, so that there is psychological safety that, if I fail in something innovative out there, I won't be reprimanded for it. If you have that, you tend to succeed. And as they say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you may have a big strategy I want to change, but in a culture, if you say that, nobody will take risks, nobody will do that, nothing is going to happen in your organization. And I'll give you an example of how we did at ACCA. So one of the aspects at ACCA is we have to change ourselves. As Hemant also pointed out, this is a famous quote that disruption is either going to happen to you or you are going to be the cause of the disruption out there. So a couple of years back, any academic qualification used, and still in a lot of places we have pen and paper. That's how we give an examination out there. But when you go to an employer, nobody uses pen and paper. They say we use computers. Who writes a note and gives this to his boss? It doesn't happen. So we changed our examinations to computer based. So now you go on a computer, you actually have your spreadsheet, Excel, PowerPoint, and then that's how you answer a question. Then we moved to the next level. We said, because of the COVID, can you actually have examinations back at your home? So we started remote invigilation, which you can log in and the technology is there. So it's not that one function was thinking that I need to change it. It was technology, it was people, it was legal, it was compliance, it was finance, whether it's viable or not, it was all, everything came together, and we actually ended up a product in which you can sit at your home, give your examinations in the comfort. That person knows that you're not going to cheat, and you cannot cheat so easily. It will catch how your eyes are moving, what's your typing speed, is there anybody around you, is there a mirror, it's very difficult to do that, right?
No, I still like the term. I think you can't cheat easily, but still you can.
So it's about disruption, but culture is very critically important.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that's, and very, very rightly put. I think Deepika, quick comment from you.
I think I'll just add to what Gaurav said, the culture being the foundation, and Shark Tanks don't only work on TV, they work on companies as well. So if you create a culture of bringing ideas on the table and you're accepting to it, they get implemented. You enable them, you support them. Today's generation, where most of our companies would have more than 80% as millennials, they come with wide knowledge. They don't come with only the bookish knowledge and the qualifications which we believe in. So if you're not able to tap onto that knowledge, if you're not able to encourage that knowledge, I think we lose out a lot. And that's something where you can go proactive. You can go much earlier than even outside what's happening. They bring things to you where you really open your mind to say, okay, let me. Even the hybrid thing, what we've been talking, and we are bored about the fact, you would have, companies would be proactively working on the fact, some will want to come, some will not want to come, but they will still want to contribute beyond themselves. So how do you create that environment and culture? But like I said, Shark Tanks work everywhere. So let's make full use of that culture and ideas which they bring on the table.
Sure.
I'll just add one point to that. So there is a concept of reverse learning which is happening. 20 years back, I used to join. Yeah, exactly. So, now you're actually hiring people because you want to learn from them. What is happening in the industry? How do I change? Rather than, people joining and learning from their bosses that I'm going to learn how this is going to affect.
It's there everywhere.
So now I hire people to understand what is the industry and how do I change? How do I adapt to it?
Right. I'll just take a quick comment from Sanjay and then go to Sunil and then comes from Sanjeev. So Sanjay, connecting from this whole culture to this whole idea of experience as a service. Right. And experience here, while we say customer experience more colloquially or sometimes even employee experience, but experience is experience. It may be customer, employee, whatever it is. So if you can connect this culture of creating value-driven organization and quickly to this experience as a service, and then we'll like to hear from others. Sanjay, to you. Quick comment, Sanjay.
Okay, I'll try.
It'll be quick.
Okay, try to make it quick. Trust him to put the difficult ones to me. Okay, so I'll tell you something. Culture, clearly one of the toughest thing for you to change, for anyone of us to change. For example, I'm going back to the opening comment saying we don't like to call ourselves support functions. The problem is we hardly are the influencer of that support functions. It's the main businesses at times, or the core businesses at times, who continue to call us support functions, whether we like it or not. That shift is a cultural shift. And if we can influence the entire organization to believe that the support function, so-called, with whatever name referred, if we can influence the organization to make that internal change, to not treat the support functions as support functions, and name them whatever you want to, but certainly not treat them
the way they should, be treated like support. I think that cultural difference shift itself is a very difficult move to make. I mean, that's an example I'm saying. That's a disruption in the mind of the people who really are the believers of the fact that I am the one who sells the, a bottle of water, creates it, sells it, whatever. And all of you are just pen pushers and stuff like that. This is a belief that we need to alter and change. And that's where behaviors will change. That's where experience will change. Because all of it has to stem with what it's internal with the organization. And experience is linked to what is internal to the organization, what is the ethos. And there, at least in my opinion, value and values get linked. And if you are intending to create a value organization, it is impossible unless you first create a values-based organization. That's what will influence employee experience, customer experience, and everything else. Just that one little point.
Yeah. So you want to come in with a comment?
I'll be very, very short. So I'm just stealing 60 seconds of your role as a moderator,
Okay.
So everybody gave some very good examples of disruption, but in the era in which we are currently living, we actually need to build organizations who can deal with disruptions on an ongoing basis, who can create and lead disruptions, as you mentioned. So the bigger question, I think, which all of us need to understand and kind of come out with some answers and solutions is, how do we create an organization which lives and breathes disruption on a daily basis? As finance people, we have, at least I have been taught that you are the steward of stability, right? But in the current era, flexibility is the key to stability. And when I say flexibility, it's actually a very, very modified form of disruption. So the bigger point is not what disruptions have we caused or how have we dealt with the disruptions in the past. I think the bigger question as a moderator, and I'm kind of putting myself into your role, is, have we been able to create organizations which can manage this disruption, which can adapt to disruptions, and which can create disruptions?
Absolutely, Sunil. I think it's a good point, and I think that's where I think some of the pointers which came out, I think, and some of the leaders talked about that. You have to be the lead in terms of creating and be the cause to create those disruptions, just not be responding to those disruptions. Otherwise, you'll be just, and sometimes you'll be responding to it as well. I know you want to come in, Samir, and I think Sanjeev wants to go as well. But I want to connect these two points back to this whole thing and come out of the disruption to connect with experience. Because the whole idea is, and again, I'm taking experience, how do you really measure experience? If you can cite some examples, right? Just leaving it, no, it's not about some metrics, but even today, what has happened is, for everything and anything, we talk experience as a word, and we want to see how can you weave, like even Sanjay was talking about, I offer this product, but finally, is that product resulting into an experience? And there'll be a lot of disruptions behind it, etc., etc. So if you can connect with an experience, this point will be helpful, Samir. And then Sanjeev, you want to come in between.
Sure. Quick comment, Rakesh. So I believe earlier there were two types of companies, which were big and small. Now also there are two types of companies, but they're either fast or slow. Even if you're big, as long as you're fast, you will survive. If you're big and slow, God forbid, even if you're small and slow, then also chances of you survival are very, very limited. As far as the other question you asked earlier, as an example of how we were able to solve something which kept us awake in the night, an example, when I was heading finance, and it's a big American company I work for, there are many product lines, many divisions, and we have common customers. So the common customer is expecting a similar discount irrespective of the product line, whereas a profitable product line doesn't want to give discount, a non-profitable product line. So how do we tackle it? So we came up with an example of deal desk. So internally we formed a deal which got into the weighted average of discount we can give to the same end customer, and then internally allocate back whatever is the discount or the profit that particular product line deserved. One, and two, the deal desk also started extrapolating based on the discounts being asked, which product line will come to the end of the life. As far as your experience is concerned, linking it with fast and slow, I think we as leaders have to lead by example. Learn, unlearn, relearn from whoever comes in the organization afresh. Learn from the competition, look at the trend is your friend. And lastly, I'll say that the B2C and the B2B spaces are converging. That's the most fundamental shift. I think the B2B mindset was relatively speaking slower. The ability not to correlate that with the upstream and downstream, I can't emphasize on this point as much. And everybody's, even the sales guy, as she said, you got to market yourself, but also help the sales guys sell. They can't sell on their own. You come up with an innovative product, somebody else copies it in 6 months. Your pricing power is there only for 6 months. So you have to help them sell, whether it's to kind of get into a leasing model, some kind of pay for use. So it's all end to end. Experience is what data tells you. See what data is telling you, catch that trend, go back to your sales guy, go back to your production guy. Some example I can share with you is like we are a biosciences and life technology company. We sell equipments to test the composition of any solid, gas or liquid in the world. So when we get the reports on our software, I am looking at it from a perspective, is the customer using 25% of the features I offer, 40%, 50%, 75%? Can I bring up a new stripped down version of the same machine? Because this guy only using 40% of my products. Why do I have to build 60? I mean, iPhone, I don't know what all features have. I don't even want most of them. So that kind of a thing has to come in for people who are using it as an experience and passing the feedback. Unfortunately, the silos which big corporations, including American companies like us, have created have to be broken. Get the feedback back. And lastly, I'll say that there's a very nice research report as to why American companies don't do as well as Japanese companies. Ford is gone, GM is gone, all the American banks have gone, whereas the Japanese seem to succeed. They always have higher management from local. So a lot of aspects, but experience is something which you have to feel and pass back to the entire company.
Interesting perspective, and I think I'm sure it will be a point of dialogue at the cocktail too. But before that, Sanjeev, a quick perspective from you, and after that, I want to go to Rakhi, you, and maybe Anup, you. More talking in terms of the customer, and if you can think through it, the customer touch points versus customer journey, because everybody is thinking of those touch points, but is somebody thinking of those journeys? And if you're trying to drive that experience, you have to think of that journey. It may be step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, 5, multiple touch points, but how to connect with the journey. So I'll come back to you, Anup and Rakhi, on that. Sanjeev, you want to complete any perspective in terms of, share any perspective in terms of this experience as a service?
So I can give you examples and I will explain you. So when I was setting up a shared service for Metro, so one of the challenges was that how do you pay the farmers, because they were delivering tomatoes, they were delivering vegetables at the stores. And that became a challenge, and that was becoming a sore point, because while we were waiting invoices in Pune, somebody was living in Bangalore and somewhere. So I said, how do you create that experience? And we said, okay. And the whole team went and we went to the farmer. What do you want? What's your problem? They said, I want to get paid because I'm bringing all this. So I give him a debit card, we put up a machine, he will weigh and get a slip. And that amount will get loaded over his debit card to withdraw money. Right? So that is an experience. While I was working for a pesticide company, the challenge became, now you have a product which is world class, but people don't know you can mix, you can do how to use that product. And how do you reach? You can't go thousands of people on the farmers. We have 4.7 million farmers in India. So what we did was go and understand what you can do. And to our surprise, we realized that everybody came, why you are not reaching us through technology? 65% of the farmers have smartphones. We never thought of this. That is an experience you can create. And that is, you need to know your customer, what he has and what demand and what problem he has. So we created an app called Atmanthan app. It is on Android. It has now more than 2.2 million users. But you know what the customer wants. You need to be closer to understand and create an experience. Similarly, it happened with the pesticide, how much you have to spray and all that. So simple, use a simple drone, just go and look at where the affected areas are. You don't have to walk across and all that. And that was in Australia. So they said that it will take us 1 hour to go and figure out. And they said, we want a solution. So obviously you need to be closer, create that and use the resources which people want. And so I think it's all about creating experiences. And one last point, I think on the internal experience as well with all the support functions, we call them enabling areas in our firm right now. I think the important thing is every project, everything all the support functions are integral to the projects we do. So as a finance business partner, she said HR business partner, you can't do anything without talent. If HR doesn't get you talent today in great attrition, how do you do that? Yeah. Finance takes a decision, they bring information, and data is information today and food for thought. So I think everything is integrated, and unless you create an experience for your people internally, you can't create an experience outside.
I think it's a good perspective. I'll take a quick comments from you, Rakhi and Anup, in terms of this whole touch points and the journey and experience. And after that, I would like to move to a topic on the security and investing in technologies. And maybe Raghu, you have to share some thoughts on security, right? Data security, information security, cyber security, and whatnot. So we'll come to that. But a quick comments from both of you, and then I go to Raghu. Customer journey versus customer touch points.
See, I think I would also go back to what he was saying about the whole experience, about features, about, it starts while it starts with maybe a sales guy when it comes to customer journey, but then there are a lot of people who finally get involved. For example, in my organization, I can say that we have a complete team which is called client experience team, and then this team is kind of involved with all the different functions which can have a touch point with the client, and how do we make that whole experience or whole journey very smooth, very seamless for the clients. So we work on that model where we have a function which works with different departments to make it work, make this whole journey work with the client.
Yeah.
So that's how we in our organization make it.
No, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
I think Anup, if you can just build on that, because I think usually multiple touch points always looks at how well I'm doing, but how to connect that journey, because finally the experience, I think even you talked about the experiences. You buy sometimes Apple iPhone for experience, right? You buy something for experience, while the touch point, and Sanjay was talking one of the example that, if your payment process has taken a lot of time, then you have bad experience. So how to connect that multiple touch points with an experience? If you have any thoughts to share, it will be great.
So Sanjay was right when he made the comment. And till a few years ago, the mantra was long live first contact resolution. Now that is gone. First contact resolution is expected when you interact with the service provider. I'll give you a very simple example of touch points and experience. And this was near home. I went to PVR after a number of years, maybe 2 years. And as I walked in, there were 6-7 employees standing, and they began clapping. And I looked back and said, "Koi VIP hoga." But we were 4 of us, and 8 of them were clapping. And then suddenly someone comes and says, "Okay, this movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes. The interval will be after 1 hour and 20 minutes. Interval will be for 10 minutes. So please," normally earlier, no one would know how long the interval would be. So do you go out? If you want to smoke, do you take a smoke, or do you just grab something to eat? Now it's changed. Now in one of the theaters, there's a kiosk. You go in, you just punch in what you want, at what time the food will be served on your seat. So I think this has really changed how you experience movie going. So one of the simple examples, and I think why customer experience as a service is essential, is because it promotes loyalty, it promotes retention, and also it promotes brand advocacy for the particular brand.
Absolutely, a very apt thought, and I think great example of PVR and VIP hoga. I think that is very important. VIP tha. Very nice. Absolutely correct. So I think a quick comment from you, Raghu, and I think I'll wait for Hemant and Sanjay to also make some comment. And Sunil, you can come in on this. Maybe Joydev, you can quickly bring a very, very quick. You have to be literally doing a rapid fire to make sure that we earn our cocktails and dinner. So we'll do a very quick comments here. So Raghu, starting with you in terms of this whole value-driven organization, while there's a technology which I think has been a lot spoken about, but still want to understand how much and how critical it is to invest into new age technology, not the core technology, and a lot of new age technology. But the second part of that is also about security, right? Looking at this whole data privacy, because more and more you are trying to open up, the more and more the challenges in terms of some of these security which is there, the data privacy, information protection, cyber security, etc. How do you see the organization should be balancing in terms of investing into some of that, as that they're investing into the front core business?
Basically, organizations will have to invest into data, safety, security, but how do you rationalize that? I think most often what I have at least experienced, and this is something that we debate constantly, is that what data is necessary. You know, there is this code to collect data, which has never been utilized, right? Which never gets utilized. What do you do with that data? The question is that you have to rather spend your time and energy more to understand what data you collect, but have the best cybersecurity, best data protection norms. I recall a very interesting anecdote where we were supposed to be signing a confidentiality with some potential acquisition. And they said, for every data breach, we will charge you 35 million euros. Okay. Obviously, there was pin drop silence in the room. And I was in some of the meeting, I was called in. I said, so what's wrong? Let's sign. Are we in the business of data pilferage, or are we in the business of data protection? If you're sure that you will not misutilize the data, then whether it's 35 million or $1 billion, it doesn't make any difference. You'll never pay that. The question is that I think you can't just say that just because I run this, have the, spend billions of dollars, because you have to balance between that. But you must understand what is the kind of data that you get, what is the data that is utilized, and what is the technology that you need to do that. If you go and just buy the best technology, you might be spending good money after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I hear from you, that it's important to connect that entire principle of value-driven organization, right, and saying where to really put the money. And I think some of the security principles are very critical to build it.
What you're hearing, I think this is, and this is my personal view, while GDPR is the most sought after data privacy law in the world, I think it's like the UK Bribery Act, which is extraterritorial, which will never be able to enforce it. They'll never be able to, because if you look at the UK Bribery Act, if they have the right to sue somebody in Bihar if he's paying a bribe, how will you do that? Just because he has some condition in UK. So somewhere even the legislators will have to come to some amount of sanity in terms of how they draft the law. One of the reasons why the data privacy, I'll not get into that, we got withdrawn, is only because you can't get too ambitious. You must draft a rules, regulation, or law what is required. Just because you have the power and you have the majority, can't draft everything.
Sure. I'm just extending my another 5 minutes. I hope everybody is okay with that, right? So because I want to take this perspective in terms of investment in technologies, right, and new age technologies. And I think even there's a perspective by saying you can't just go and say, I'm in a shopping mode, so I want to buy ABCD because everybody else is buying that. Yeah. But how do you really connect back to your value-driven organization, as we're talking about, which has to focus in terms of this business growth, it has to focus in terms of the governance, it has to focus in terms of this entire experience. How do you drive that decision making of investing into a new age technologies? So quick comments from you, Hemant, and then Sanjay from you.
So for some time, my life was easy because the right side of my brain was the CFO's brain and the left side of my brain was the CIO's brain, because I used to double hat. So it was reasonably simple. But what it taught me, and which is what I want to share, is most of the times the CFO talks numbers which the CIO does not understand, and the CIO talks tech which the CFO does not understand. The common ground is what derives value for the business. If each one starts talking their own lingo, it's not going to work. So post that, when I did not have the CIO's role, what I learned was go up to a point with data and the balance portion, go by gut. What do you understand the drivers of the business? If you understand the drivers of the business and your gut says that this tech is going to work, irrespective of what the numbers are telling you, go ahead with it. Validate it with numbers. Then there's a underlying principle. Do you understand? And which is something which I even tell my boys today, that do you understand the business as well as the CEO? If you understand the business, the numbers are taking you up to a point, but then you're getting stuck there. Bring in the gut, basis your business acumen, and just roll. You will never go wrong.
Sure. Sanjay, quick comments.
I think investing in technology is a must now, because at every point, starting from the point when we collect the milk to get the test fat and SNF, and immediately a SMS goes to that. We invest in technology. Farmers buying the vegetables, we invest in technology. Booths, what is inventory is holding, what is not moving, what he requires to push that sale. Otherwise, I can push, my sales guy can push anything else. So then during the pandemic, we felt people not into the market and still drawing the incentives and the travel and all. So investing in SFA, Salesforce automation, is one of the best thing what we are doing currently. So all this thing, and what we feel that just thinking that most of us we either will be on Oracle or SAP, and just thinking that all the systems will work on one system and investing will not work. I think there are so many, I don't know, in all of your organizations also, you must be working on various systems, and we also in organization may be working on about more than, other than SAP, all the integrations and all those, we work on almost about 20-25 systems. So we have to see that what work best for you, not to load too much onto the main your accounting systems and all, and get not the desired results. So investing in the best technology is the best thing what we can do in today's technology things, and whatever suits best for the organization.
I think the two principles which I hear from here very clearly is that one is connect with the value, and then also connect with this typically what we call 70-30, 70 data and 30 you take a business leader gut call, so which is important. You have to directionally connect it to the decision. Otherwise, a lot of analysis paralysis will happen and finally nothing will happen. And second, I think Sanjay is also very well making this point that you can't rely on your core application and saying that's all. You have to figure out something always adding on top of it, but just don't buy because you want to buy. It has to be meaningful buy, which is very, very critical. Anand, just quick comment from you in this whole pay as you go stuff in technology, because I think now these days it's all about pay as you go, and connecting with this whole capex to opex. You like it, you use it; don't like it, you just throw it. Versus spending a lot of years and money and everything, and then realize, okay, only 10% of feature of your phone you can use. You don't even know it is going to make sense. And after that, I'll come back to Gaurav in terms of connecting this whole new organization with new age technology and this people side of it, connecting that entire, and even Deepika talked about this millennials. They know sometimes technology better. I'll cite an example. Sorry, just to give an example before Anand, you come in. I was trying to drive a process change, and we are working for an organization. There, the entire, what they call tech center, the employees are from a background where they believe everything into the new age, where you can buy it here, you can just do an UPI, 30 seconds, everything in your account, etc., etc. Now they are part of an organization where the process is you buy something, you get a slip, you go and scan it, you go into a system where you will have your entries done manually by saying I have bought this, I have this is for this kind of an expense. Then 3 levels of approval will happen in the system. You have to drop that entire slip back into a Dropbox. That Dropbox will be cleared after 2 days. It will come to a center location. Somebody will review it. Again, match with the scanned and this physical. Then see that, okay, 3 levels of approval, okay, has happened or not, etc., etc. And think of those guys. And if something is missing, one GST number or something is missing, that guy has raised a query back, and and then it's again stuck for thing. And he was expecting that I got a slip, I put it on my phone, I got my money, the thing happens and the money is in the account, right? His expectation versus what the process is. So the question is how to cope up with that kind of an environment. And if any thoughts, Gaurav or Deepika, if you have, you can share. But Anand, first from you in terms of pay as you go.
No, my very short answer to your point will be that pay as you use in today's context should be interpreted as pay for the value you get. And the instant value that you get is not coming through a capex. That's why everyone has to create this conversion from a capex to opex. And of course, when we take business decisions, we have to consider the total cost of operations and the way the entire technology is advancing and all that. The cost of obsolescence also has to be built in. So that is where I think that is a great example of behavioral change of a value-driven organization. That what value you are getting, you only want to pay for that. And that value has to be seen in instant terms rather than waiting for it over a very, very long time. So that's
Great, thanks, Anand. Quick comments from you,
So
Gaurav. And
very quickly, you touched on a very important topic. So we did a research 2 years back. We surveyed 11,000 Generation Z people in finance and accountancy, which is less than 24 years. And we asked them, what is it that motivates you to work for an organization or stay in an organization out there? So 40 years back, if you would have asked somebody, they would have said money or, the kind of one. It was not at all there. Not even the top 5 money was considered. Money, they said, we'll get if we have skills. So they said the top 2 were, what skill sets am I learning? And second, was the work interesting or enjoyable? So this is the 2 things which the youngsters were looking at. And, this is where it boils down to, am I enjoying the work which I'm doing? Right? Am I learning something new? Am I contributing? Am I being valued there or not? So I think organizations who were working in traditionally those paper forms and taking those 10 approvals and everything may have to change if they want to retain or attract. Forget retain, first attracting them, right? And then retaining that kind of a talent. Because if you don't do this, you would not be able to do it. And ultimately it will impact you how you're going to be operating in an organization. You have to be a young organization out there. So that's one thing which people need to observe.
I don't know, we'll be a young organization, or we are without choice. There are more than 80%. There are no other people out there. But coming back to that, I think upskilling the current, the new, and because even when who's coming in, technology is changing so fast, how to keep pace with that and relevant technology. So the culture below, how you make sure that your people are being upskilled, you being upskilled. Your left brain, right brain was tricking to my mind. It probably produced fintech for us. So that's exactly what is required. Finance and a technology knowledge, at least awareness within ourselves, so that we can have that conversation, even to take reverse mentoring. If we talk something and I can't make out of it, I'm gone.
Yes.
So I think that culture of upskilling ourselves, upskilling them, making sure that we can utilize that. We all sit in a lot of legacy systems. How to make sure that, with the right choices and not going and buying everything outside, how do we move towards the new technology with our legacy systems so that the generation doesn't get frustrated and leave so fast. I think there are a lot of linkages to people and technology. Lastly, I would again go back and reiterate, give them that open environment to say, because the one thing more, you said 2 things, the third thing I want to add, why they want to stay in a company is the purpose. For them, it's very important what value I bring on the table. If I can't understand the value I bring on the table, I'll find something else. If I'm just sitting there and drawing out something.
I think now we have come to the end of the session in a way, and I just want to spend literally 10 seconds, each one of you. We'll go round, right? 10 seconds literally. And if you want to pass and let others think about it and share first, take that is fine and come back with a thought. The question is simple. If you have to pick 1 or 2 words to say, this is what going to really drive the sustaining and nurturing the value-driven organization. You have to pick those 2 words or 1 sentence, and it has to be in 10 seconds, right? Difficult. You can't. Okay.
So whoever wants to go first, you want to go first? Value for money and value for many. That's the thing what we have. Like whatever you deliver to the customer, it should have value for him, and it should be number. It should not be mass. We are in the mass game.
Value for money and value for many is what he's saying. So that's a good one. So
People and culture.
People and culture. Okay. Agility and trendsetter.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Culture in the organization and values.
Culture and organization and values. Interesting.
Causing.
And we can jump also if you want to take it. Yeah.
I'd say causing disruption rather than waiting for disruption to happen.
Interesting. Very nice. Causing disruptions. Very nice. Yes.
Leadership and organization culture.
Leadership and organizational culture.
Leaders
Okay.
who drive.
Okay. Interesting. Samir, you want?
I'll simply say walk the talk, don't expect others to change yourself as well. In fact, change first and then expect others to change.
Be the change. Very nice. Absolutely.
I'll add a similar line, bring value, derive value.
Bring value to life. Yeah, Sanjeev, you want to take?
Yeah, customer centricity and creating that experience.
Experience. Absolutely. Wonderful. Okay.
Upskilling, yes.
Upskilling yourself. Okay.
Everything is again. Watch out for Generation Z.
Yeah. Sorry, come again. Watch out for
Generation Z.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Interesting. Very nice. So, Sunil, last words from you.
We are going to keep you in business there.
Double.
I keep studying that.
Great. Sunil.
So you said 10 seconds, I'll take 3. So no regrets tech. No regret tech.
Oh, no regret text. Wonderful. I think some of these words, believe me, we are going to compile it together, of course, through other points which we have discussed, convert into a paper and will be circulating, of course, to all of us and to the industry at large. It was thoroughly enjoying. I can tell you the kind of conversations which we are having. We can go on, and all of you will have a lot of perspectives to share. But the idea was to hear from a diverse leaders from a different industry, different functions, and of course, challenging some of the thought process and triggering some of the thought process, if I can say, as a part of our takeaways. Wonderful talking with you all. Really, really appreciate. Thank you, each one of you. I take this opportunity to thank each one of you on behalf of Shared Services Forum for taking this effort, being here in person. I also take this opportunity to thank the organizers, Shared Services Forum, the partners, R Value Group, Quintus Global, and ACCA for making this happen. Now, I think we have earned our cocktail and dinner, and it's all open for having a lot of informal chat and conversations. So please join us for that informal chats and informal conversations. Look forward. Thank you.
Novelty in the software.